Welcome, everyone. I think my first job here is to ask you to do two things. First of all, mute your microphone, but if you can, unmute your video. We would like to take a group photo, which is a custom that we have. Go there. There. Is it showing up okay? Okay, well, first of all, it's really great to see a lot of old and new friends on our that have joined us today. It's really my pleasure to serve as the executive director of the Center for Functional Electrical Stimulation. I'd like to thank all the members of our consortium. The Department of Veterans Affairs, Rehabilitation, Research and Development funds our center and enables this activity. We're a consortium, and we have 4 other members of our FES Center consortium, and they are Case Western Reserve University, Metro Health Medical Center, University Hospitals, and the Cleveland Clinic Medical Center. And thanks everyone for joining us. I see we have a lot of people from in town, and we have quite a few people from around the country, so welcome to you as well. Okay. Okay, I'm having trouble advancing my slide. All right, sorry, let me see what I need to do here. There we go. Okay, I'm just going to start off with a quick reminder. Most of you probably don't need this, but I want to remind you what functional electrical stimulation is about. That's our name. That's what most of us do. Functional electrical stimulation is the use of small electrical currents that are used to replace natural activation or to modulate neural circuits. And if we can figure out the kinds of stimulation to use, the pattern, the amplitude, we can really speak the language of the nervous system. And that's the fundamental basis of most of the work that we do. There are a wide variety of different ways to interface with the nervous system using FES. We can do it in peripheral nerves, we can do it in the brain, we can do it through the skin, we can do it in the spinal cord. We can interface with basically any of the neural systems in the body. There are some distinct advantages of FES if it's used appropriately. It's something that you can target pretty precisely with the right kinds of interfaces. You can turn it on and off, and it goes on and off instantly, and it typically has fewer side effects. The other thing about interfacing with functional electrical stimulation is that just about every function in your body is influenced or controlled by the nervous system. So it has many, many different applications throughout the body. It can be for motor processes, sensory processes. It can be for neuromodulation. We can activate and inactivate neural circuits. On the right is a diagram of the body, and it's just a listing of the kinds of applications that are being implemented by members of the Cleveland FES Center. And so that's a broad range of things that ranges from things in the brain, epilepsy and Parkinson's disease, to breathing and coughing and reaching and grasping and walking and many other things throughout the body. More recently, to mitigate pain has become a major focus of the FES Center, and applications in the autonomic nervous system. So there is no shortage of neural circuits and dysfunctions in these neural circuits that can be addressed potentially by functional electrical stimulation. Now, what we do as a research center is transform rehabilitation. And that's going to be sort of my message today. And what do I mean by transforming rehabilitation? It means that it's our job to discover and implement and translate paradigm shifting rehabilitation interventions, things that make significant changes in the lives of people. So that's the first thing, a major impact on the daily lives of the recipients of our technologies. Changes in the clinical standards of care. So the functional significance is sufficient that the clinical standards change and it becomes regular clinical care. And it needs to be accessible and affordable for all. So as we're developing these technologies, we have to make sure that they can actually get out and be used by people. So what's the FES Center strategy in general? Well, we have clinical expertise. As you'll see, we have quite a few clinical principal investigators in the FES Center. They do a great job at identifying clinical need. We evaluate the ethics and safety of our projects, and we implement these clinically in people. We have scientists. They look at physiological mechanisms, and they discover new concepts for intervening, wholly new ways of addressing some of these rehabilitation problems. And they do preclinical feasibility testing of these interventions. We have engineers, and they develop new technologies and tools that allow these new concepts to be implemented. They build prototypes that are used clinically in smaller trials. And we do a lot of interfacing with humans. I mean, we implement these in people and try them. And finally, we try to translate these into products, that we take these discoveries, we turn them into products that can be used with people with disabilities. And we also disseminate clinically through other means as well, things like techniques for therapy, et cetera. So we translate treatments into clinical practice. And it's not as if we have 4 separate units in the FES Center. We do this all in collaboration, and it's one of our strengths. It always has been. Way before my time, was putting together teams that did all of these aspects, or many of them. And this is the end result. We have many different teams working on many different of the kinds of issues that I showed up front, and we work with people and we try to translate these out into the world. Okay, well, things were going along just fine until about 9 months ago. And obviously we're all living in a new era right now, a COVID-19 era. And first I'd like to recognize all of our clinical partners. They really, stepped up and fought the battle, the clinical battle at the front lines. There was testing going on from, cooperation between the Cleveland Clinic and university hospitals. The VA jumped up and did many things. The Metro, it also did treatment, but were instrumental in modeling the sort of the epidemiology of the disease. Case and the Cleveland Clinic turned their brand new medical student education building into a overflow hospital. So we really, I applaud our clinical partners. They really did a fantastic job when things were looking really dire. So the FES Center has made a number of adjustments as well. If you're part of the center, you already know this. But here's what you can do. You can take tours of a bunch of the laboratories of FES Center investigators and the programs that they run. These are virtual tour of the center. You see the web address there. We have an internal, basically presentation and discussion activity that happens on the first Tuesday of every month, as it says, first Tuesdays. It's been very active. The attendance is up by, it's almost doubled since we went to a virtual format. That's something to keep in mind for the future. So obviously we're spread around town, and maybe doing this virtually is a permanent solution. Likewise, we've always broadcast our neuroprosthesis seminars, not always, but in recent years we have. But again, the attendance has been up substantially, but this is our seminar series, and it is also virtual. I'll say a little bit more about that in a couple minutes. And obviously, we've worked very hard to make it safe for the research activities to continue. So the center has adapted and adjusted, and we're moving along pretty well. So actually, the research activities are fully active at all of our locations, at the VA Medical Center, at Case, at Metro, at University Hospitals, and the Cleveland Clinic. I checked with all of them, and they all said, no, we're back up to full strength in terms of research activities. Most of them are back up to full strength on clinical activities too, by the way. My message to our investigators is make sure you follow the guidelines for your institutions, where you're doing your research. They're not so different across these different institutions, but make sure you follow the guidelines. They're there for your safety, and particularly they're there for the safety of our research participants. And like I kind of mentioned suggested a minute ago, I think everybody needs to look to see how we can come up with some permanent improvements to the way we do things. You know, this has kind of forced us to adopt some new methods. This is one of them, the online conferencing, and it has its limitations, but it also has quite a few strengths. And I think that we all need to look for ways that we can come up with. This isn't just an interim period where we're surviving, but how can we come out of this stronger and more active? Okay, so I want to talk about some of the accomplishments of the FES Center over the past year. So I have some numbers here. This is a kind of a tradition. So we have 87 investigators. And as I noted before, 53 of them are clinicians, physicians and therapists, but are active clinically, and 34 are scientists or engineers. We have staff members that are sort of the technical members of the team and the clinical members of the team, and some in operations. And we have a very large trainee group in the center. So all told, that's like 240 people that are part of the FES Center. So, you know, I think we're pretty robust in terms of participation. Our funding is effectively where it was at this time last year. It's not a big surprise. Most of that funding was awarded prior to COVID, but people are moving along on their projects. We're presenting scientific publications and presented at meetings, and had book chapters. And finally, we've been also very robust at sort of the translational aspects, 26 invention disclosures and patent applications at 74. And 16 issued patents. So this is a very good record in terms of moving things out into the world. Okay. The individual investigators also have had a great year, and I'm not going to go through every single kind of accomplishment. There's like I said, there's 87 of us, and we all have multiple accomplishments this year. But thankfully, the FES Center webpage has many of these listed. So I took a screenshot of the webpage shown there, the blog, and it goes on and on and on for pages. So if you're interested in spending a little more time on individual project accomplishments, you can certainly do that. It's easy to do online. I do want to recognize Hunter Peckham. I saw you on there, Hunter. I'm glad you could come. Hunter, first of all, he has been promoted to emeritus professor in the past few months. And Hunter was the founding member of the FES Center and the director for a long time. And he's really the reason that we're here today. And I want to thank you for that, Hunter. He was also given an award by the Biomedical Engineering Society very recently. Last week, he gave a lecture, the Robert A. Pritzker Distinguished Lecture Award. And you can see there's a screenshot of him during that lecture and a photo of the earlier times in the FES Center. But I wanted specifically to recognize Hunter for his activities and kind of the essential contributions that he has made over the years, especially to the FES Center. I also would like to, recognize that Metro Health it has committed to make a major renovation of the rehabilitation area of their hospital on the old Brooklyn campus. This is a direct benefit to the FES Center among other entities, and so it sort of reinforces the relationship between us and Metro Health, and we're really looking forward to that taking place. So I'm going to zip through a bunch of other ones. As you can see, these are sort of some highlights of accomplishments. We have a user assessment project, global consensus on dizziness, motor function after TBI, a new mechanism of possible mechanism for epilepsy and neural communication. Advanced, Michael Fu has an NSF Career Award. We've done a lot of work in virtual reality and DBS, for using virtual reality for visualizing DBS used in Parkinson's disease. We hosted a movie premiere in town in January. This movie featured one of the participants in the project between myself and Balu Ajiboye and Jonathan Miller. And Andrew Shofstall has a new way of managing pain with an injectable electrode. So there are many, many, many accomplishments. These are just sort of cherry picked out of many. And again, the FES Center is the sum total of what the investigators accomplish, and we have accomplished a lot in the past year. I'm very proud to be the director of such a productive center. Okay, now there are many ways that you can find out what's happening in the FES Center, where potential participants can find out how to join studies, etc. And I'm just going to go through these quickly. So we have a new web page, same address, fescenter.org. But it goes through, this is, it shows these are our research thrusts, which I'll get to, but as you can see at the top, it has information about the investigators. Research participants have a link. They can look at if you're interested in the research areas, there's news, events, etc. And there's a link here for clinical trials that are ongoing, and there's quite a few of these. So if someone is looking for general information about the FES Center, the web page is outstanding source of that information. We have Chris Kowalski and Tony DeMarco featured. They were filmed by the VA, and they're showing up in waiting rooms in VA waiting rooms across the country. And this is about using FES for cough in people with spinal cord injuries, a very important and very successful approach to date. So we're reaching out directly to veterans in the VA through these waiting rooms. We've done outreach to a number of veteran service organizations, the Paralyzed Veterans of America, United Spinal Association, the American Legion, and the Amputee Support Clinic. We're reaching out to them to introduce them to what we do and what we might be able to do for them. So again, we're doing some direct veteran outreach. There's more to come. This is a start. Oh yeah, I forgot the part that says due to COVID. We came to them. We've reached out to them rather than inviting them in to come into our facilities. And yes, there is an app for us. So Cheryl and Erica and others have developed an app for the FES Center that is very cool. It has all the essential information that you need as a member of the FES Center. It contains some of the information that you can find on the website, but it also has a way of communicating. Like, for example, it says if you're interested in presenting at a First Tuesday, contact Cheryl Dudek, it says. So you can look up investigators, you can look up at events that are upcoming, and it's very easy to install. You go to whatever the appropriate store is, your Apple store or the Android store, and you search for Cleveland FES Center, and there it is, and it installs and it works instantaneously. So it's a very nice thing to keep in touch with what's happening in the center. We're on social media. So we have, in particular, on Facebook and Twitter. We regularly post in these media, and we've had quite a bit of sort of contact. So if you look at the Facebook numbers, we reached one of the key added values provided by the FES Center, and this is a big, complicated table, but kind of the important information for right now is in the left column. And these are sort of the resources that we provide. The ones that are in black are ones that we've already been doing, and some of them are going to be enhanced. Well, they'll all be enhanced, but some will have things added to them. And the words in red indicates resources that we're intending to add in our renewal. So I'll just go through these quickly. You know, we provide administrative support. They take care of our budgetary issues for the center. They take care of budgetary issues for VA funded work. They facilitate the kind of the solutions to what the needs of the investigators are. Okay, so they do purchasing. They're involved in the web pages and the apps and the social media, information dissemination, etc. So they're kind of the heart and soul of holding us together. We do a lot of technology. We develop technology. We hardware, implantable hardware in particular. We do a lot of software development, modeling and simulation. We have some facilities that are used for fabrication. We have facilities, research facilities all around town that have been provided by the VA, our home, and by our consortium members in their institutions. This is where the research happens. This is where the labs are and where the core facilities are. We build research capacity, and this is definitely going to be a major emphasis in the renewal. We want to train the next generations, not just the next generation, but maybe the one after that. We have to start thinking about that, of rehabilitation researchers. So that's one. And we want to develop the professional skills and the leadership of all the PIs, not just the new ones. We have regulatory support already that we provide. We have contracts with the appropriate kinds of cores and individuals. We are going to add now, though, facilitating clinical trials. This has happened. People have run clinical trials in the center pretty broadly, but we're going to actually have a person who can help be a liaison between our investigators and various clinical trials groups that already exist. We're adding a bioethics core. Again, we have obviously paid attention to bioethics for many years, but we're going to specifically have a group of bioethics experts that can guide us in our overall direction and be available as co-investigators on grants for various interventions that we're planning to do. Rehabilitation needs assessments. Again, we have done this on kind of an ad hoc basis. A lot of the investigators have done this on their own. We're going to provide a central resource to help help us evaluate the real needs of the people who we're trying to treat. And again, we have provide statistical support for many years. We do medical illustration, which has been very successful. And we do outcomes assessments every year to see how well we're doing as a center. That's a part of, in particular, a VA R&D requirement, but we also do it for our own benefit as well. So these are kind of the things that we do to support the investigators. Typically, these are in sort of synergy with activities that already go on in our institutional partners, and they add where it's not typical for the partners to provide, and it's been pretty successful. And I'm looking forward to some of the new additions that we're making. We also work to sort of put together a coherent strategic plan for research activities. We don't tell the individual investigators what to do by any stretch of the imagination. We make opportunities available to them, and we try to identify, like I said before, synergies and sort of cooperative activities. And so these 5 areas are the research thrust that will be pursued in the coming renewal. And I'll talk more about them now. So movement restoration has been, it was kind of the founding research thrust for the FES Center. It's still a major, probably the major component of the work that goes on. And it's coordinated activation of paralyzed muscles to improve function. Brain health is a big, in terms of number of investigators and research funding, it's a big sprawling thrust that it uses targeted activation of neural systems to replace or modulate brain structures. And I'll go into a little more detail about each one of these in a moment. Pain mitigation has become a big area. It has been an area that we've pursued for a couple of decades, really. And now it's really expanding rapidly. And it's the use of targeted non-addictive pain relief in the form of functional electrical stimulation. Autonomic restoration. So this is modulation of autonomic systems to regulate internal body and visceral functions. This is also a major newer approach, broadly speaking, in industry. A number of pharmaceutical companies are buying medical device stimulation companies because of the modulation that can be done by electrical stimulation or by optical stimulation, for that matter, in the autonomic nervous system, to modulate things that you wouldn't normally associate with FES. And finally, kind of common to all of these other 4 areas is this translation and clinical dissemination thrust. And this is to convert laboratory discoveries into products and effective clinical practices. And this is the bottom line. If we can't affect the way that clinical practice is done, then our research is not as useful as it could be. And it could have a long timeline. It could involve very basic things. It could have a very short timeline, tweaking of an existing approach. But getting these out into the world takes a separate skill set than being a great scientist or engineer or clinician. And we're really going to focus on this in the coming years. Okay, so movement restoration. Many of you will be familiar with this. This is using electrical stimulation of paralyzed muscles to restore hand and arm function, to regulate breathing and cough. And it involves user interfaces. How does the person control this? There are a number of different groups: people with spinal cord injury, people with stroke, people with amputation, et cetera, that can benefit from these kinds of interventions. This includes a fairly broad range of body functions, but these are movement functions. And again, this has been a major component of the FES Center for many years and continues to be so. Okay, so let's go to brain health next. So brain health also includes a lot of things, but it's targeted stimulation of neural structures. And that can include brain structures, it can include peripheral structures, but it's basically to modulate or to replace the function of brain systems. The applications include Parkinson's disease and other movement disorders, stroke especially, traumatic brain injuries, epilepsy, and neuropsychiatric disorders as an emerging area as well. And our activities there include, improved targeting for DBS electrodes, brain stimulation to enhance recovery from stroke, to enhance the rehabilitation process, to develop new approaches for neuropsychiatry and for traumatic brain injury, which have been kind of tough to crack, and to produce new kinds of brain modulation. I said it's a low power there. That's a low frequency, Dominique. Sorry about that. I guess I had low power on my mind. But ways of modulating the brain to prevent seizures and epilepsy. Pain mitigation, I talked about a little bit already, but it's to provide targeted non-opioid relief of pain through electrical stimulation. And this can be of peripheral nerves. You know, for example, in the shoulder, it has been an area with that has been pursued by John Che and Rich Wilson and their colleagues. It can be in the spinal cord. Spinal cord stimulation has been invented by Tom Mortimer, who's showing up on my screen right here a while ago, but really being expanded. We've hired a new faculty member, Mike Moffett, who is an expert in pain treatments with spinal cord stimulation, among other things. And you know, this can be applied to a number of things, like shown here: neuropathic pain, neuromuscular pain, post-surgery pain. The electrical block team is shown here. It's a little hard to show electrical block schematic, except schematically, but to be able to stop the neural activity that's causing the pain is basically the idea there, and it can be used in a number of areas, including for amputation neuroma pain. So there are many activities here, understanding the mechanisms of pain, moving, you know, technology into a wider range of applications. I've been approached about other things like headache and eye and facial pain. You know, we have Michael Jenkins has recently joined the FES Center, and he's interested, again, among other things, in using optical stimulation methods to reduce pain. So, and we have opportunities to collaborate with a number of industry partners. This is a big clinical market. Whoops, got too fancy for myself. Autonomic restoration. So, you know, the autonomic nervous system controls all the things in your body that you don't pay attention to, you know, the digestion and heart function and breathing and many, many, many other things. And because it's part of the nervous system, it can also be modulated by electrical stimulation. The interface technology for this is different because of the size and sort of the parameters of the nerves involved. But, you know, we have people working on that, both for electrical stimulation and for optical stimulation, and block for that matter. And we need to improve the understanding of these autonomic mechanisms in various kinds of dysfunction and collaborate with device and pharmaceutical companies to see them through into the society. And finally, the translation and clinical dissemination is a new research thrust for the FES Center in terms of a formal thrust. I found the sort of circle diagram. It's the NCATS diagram from NIH. It illustrates very well what I've been talking about for the FES Center. We do basic research, clinical research, implementation, and ultimately it affects the public health. We are doing this. We have Andy Cornwell is one of the FES Center staff who's focused very highly on this. We collaborate with a number of other mechanisms now, including the Coulter Foundation. I saw Steve Fenning on here earlier. He's the manager of that. And we've done a number of outreaches to the technology transfer program at the VA. Basically, we want to help investigators understand the process by which they can do translation, to connect them to the right people, to guide them through the process so that we can get their ideas relatively smoothly out into clinical practice. We really are working hard on this. I have a couple things here. We've reached out to a couple of the VA translational mechanisms in particular, and we're in the middle of a competition for a national VA translational research education program. So again, we're really going to be pushing this in the coming years. This is part of the Rehabilitation 2027 direction. Okay, so these are our 5 research thrusts, and there they are again. And you know, the idea is that we're in these areas, which are pretty broad and sort of cover many things in the both the functional electrical stimulation world and in the rehabilitation world. Not everything, but you know, we know our limits. We want to transform the way things go here. So, you know, just like I've said, the NCATS thing said it, we need to identify what the unmet clinical needs are formally. Across the center, we know this pretty well. Each one of our investigators works in an area and knows those unmet clinical needs. Now we're going to help sort of formalize this. To make big changes, we really need to understand the physiological mechanisms. A lot of times, some of the treatments that are applied have been found by accident almost, and the actual mechanisms by which they work are not well understood, and it leads to side effects. It leads to, sometimes it works in some people and it doesn't work in other people. And so we're encouraging investigators to spend some time and effort to better understand the mechanisms that lead to both to the disability that they're studying and to the treatments that they hope will improve that. We want to develop the technology needed to address these deficits. That's either internally, we develop the technology ourselves, or we partner with other research groups, with companies that have appropriate technology. But however we can do it, we get this technology to help address these deficits. And then we translate the discoveries into treatments. You know, so these, I've kind of portrayed these as 4 steps along the way, but they're very much interwoven. You know, the translation doesn't happen very easily if you haven't taken it into account in the earlier 3 stages, for example. So this is a very organic sort of synergistic activity that we're hoping that we can improve upon in the next 7 years. Okay, so I got my finger I pointing at you. I do this at most of the State of the FES Center. So the challenge this time is to think about how will rehabilitation be substantially better in 2027 because of our work collectively, and because of your work individually. What will be substantially better in 2027? And we have a 7-year timeline to consider here, and we can. It doesn't have to be done next month. It'd be better if it was done next month, but if it takes a little bit of background to find out what the mechanisms are and do some other work, I really do challenge each one of you to think, how will you make the world better in the next 7 years because of the research you do? You probably think you already do that, and I hope you are, but it's worth thinking about. Why? I think the world expects this of us. This is what they want us to do. We're a research center, and let's move things forward substantially. And we can do this, and we are doing this already. This isn't a new thing. Because we're going into a deep strategic planning time, you know, it's worth thinking about. The FES Center is here to help. We have a lot of resources. We have 87 investigators that are very open to collaborations and to new ideas. And I strongly urge you to take advantage of that. And we need you to continue to participate. So, you know, today I've looked up occasionally. We have 102 people right now on the call, and that is fantastic. And I hope that we can continue to have this kind of participation. So I'm going to end by thanking all of you again. You know, we have a uniquely dedicated investigative and support staff, and we've always been blessed with great students. And you know, thank you for your dedication, your hard work. This is exactly you know, this is why we get the work done that we do, and I want to keep that going. So thank you, and I guess we are going to be open for some questions. Is that right, Cheryl?
At this point in time, we've not received any in the chat box. So if people do have questions, you can send them into the chat box.
So you don't have to ask me questions now. You can ask me later. It's more important that you participate in our strategic planning activity. So we had a retreat a few weeks ago, and the next step are the thrust areas. The 5 thrust areas are going to meet. If you want to see your name and your area show up on my slides next year, step up and participate. And more importantly, though, you know, if you have ideas about how we should be going forward, the areas that we address, we are going to be looking for new investigators. And what those investigators are going to be hired in areas that we have decided are strategically critical to our mission. So you might want to be involved in defining what that mission is.
Good. Audrey just sent a question.
Is it in the?
And she sent it to me.
Hi, Audrey. I don't see a question from you, but you can ask me live.
Yeah, so a couple things. I just sent it to Cheryl, but the first one is, I like the incorporation of the clinical trials. You may want to think about conducting definitive clinical trials, probably through the cooperative studies program, yes, much like how Ann Spungen is doing right now with the exoskeletons. That way it would be an easier path for you to then dovetail into the query program for implementation throughout the VA medical system, okay?
Okay.
So think about it that way.
Yep, that's great advice. That's another addition. You know, a lot of times I get calls from people that say, hey, we would really like to run our clinical trial and have you guys as a clinical site. This is a common thing. And it's like, well, we're not really, we're a research center, and we have to work then with the VA or the Cleveland Clinic or whoever. And we don't have that mechanism well worked out right now, but that's what we're going to fix in our renewal. We're going to hire somebody to do that. We've talked to the local VA people already about doing this, and they were pretty excited about it. So, yeah, and we get approached by companies that want to do it. It's companies, it's other research groups, it's a wide range of people, and I want to be able to respond. Even and then our investigators come up with trials too that they want to run. And so it's kind of a combination of things like that. And it hasn't been a sort of a major focus of ours. Our investigators have taken these on individually, but the center has not really been involved in them that much. So yeah, we're going to fix that.
Yeah, that would be a huge strength. Right now, you guys are really good at first in man, but after that, there's like that black hole that follows it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it would be really great if you could incorporate that in and then work with existing VA platforms. I know I don't know if you guys, any of you, looked through or participated in the NCMRR Rehab 2020. I know that Dustin Tyler had a talk on that. So one of the big things is the questions are coming up is especially for rehabilitation types of trials, longevity of the effect, take home, especially with COVID and VA pushing rural health, that's another thing to think about.
Yeah.
So try to incorporate clinical care into your thought process and how they have to deal with veterans who live out, 100 miles from the nearest VA medical center. Yeah. These kinds of, I would say, concerns always bubble up in terms of rehab, because rehab, our service is more of a clinical type of service. We're not at the HSR&D stage yet, but we are kind of like in that little niche where, if we can get rehab into homes, that would be really, really good, especially for veterans living in the rural community. So then it kind of moves into the next realm. There's a lot of genetics and genomics going on right now. And one thing is oh God, what's her name? She's in my portfolio, so it's kind of embarrassing. I forgot her name, but she's doing right now, she does pressure ulcers work.
Bogey?
Yes. So
Okay.
she has a nice genetics trial that's going on right now. And the thing here is how would FES dovetail with genetics and genomics? That being, there are polymorphisms out there and individuals, veterans, we all have them, that render us less, I would say, amenable to rehabilitative techniques. Mm. Could FES then come in and fill this void for someone who has one of these polymorphisms? So it's something to think about. I'm not saying that it's got to be done, but it's something to think about is, you know, if you're looking at genomics and somebody's got this polymorphism, and it's like, you know, dude, can't help you. Can FES step in to fill the void? Just saying. So for one, is a good thing that you pointed out already is the pain aspect, is trying to move away from opioids and things like that. But you know, somebody who has a more genetic predisposition to pain or something, can FES step in and help? So just certain things to think about as you move on.
Yeah, we've, you know, I mentioned Mike Moffat. He worked at Boston, still does work at Boston Scientific part-time. He's kind of one of the world's leading experts at spinal cord stimulation. Yeah. The Cleveland Clinic hired a guy named Carl Saab, who is more of a mechanism, a pain mechanism person, and he's well established. I mean, he's not a new hire either. I mean, not a new investigator. He's a sort of a professor level person, and he's very interested in partnering with us at the more basic level. So I think we you know, and I don't know if Steve Lewis is still on here, but he's looking at autonomic contributions to pain. And so, you know, we already had a pretty good team, you know, Kevin Kilgore and his folks with the block, and John Che and Rich Wilson and their team with sort of neuromuscular pain. So it's become a major focus area. Yeah. Well, I appreciate the feedback, Audrey. Wow, everybody's speechless. Either that or they've all left. Okay, well, if there are no questions, I thank you very much for your time. And again, I hope you're as excited about the future of the FES Center as I am. And I'm really looking forward to another year of interactions with all of you.